Brian, thank you. Jamil Jaffer worked for the DOJ under former President Bush. He is now the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute, here to continue this conversation tonight. Jamil, thanks for your time. First of all, the DOJ has 1 week to really consider what they have to do. They have to go through this affidavit, redact what they want, what they don't want the public to see. Take us behind the scenes, the discussions happening, the things they'll be crossing out.
Well, the key to the thing they're going to try to avoid having come out are sources and methods of the investigation. So who said what to whom? How did they obtain the information? Did they use confidential human sources? Did they use some sort of surveillance and the like? They're going to try and protect the investigation itself and prevent anybody from being pressured into doing something down the road. In the meantime, it's clear that the judge wants some of the facts to come out about what was underlying his decision, to demonstrate that there was to determine that there was probable cause to believe a crime had been committed, and the warrant was sufficiently narrow that it was focused on the particular things to be seized and the particular places to be searched. So the DJ's got to be really careful about what they do redact, but also what they don't redact. I think Brian's right to be concerned that eventually when it comes out, it may be a lot of blacked out stuff. But if DOJ are playing the smart, they try to reveal as much as possible while protecting sources and methods.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but help me understand why, if the judge has certain things he thinks should be made public, why that's not just a conversation with the DOJ, let's make this public, rather than put it on them to make those choices and give them a week to do so.
Well, typically what happens, Marnie, is that the judge will want the Justice Department's view on what should be redacted. Why should it be taken out? What's the purpose? Is there a source or method the judge might not be aware of? And then the Justice Department, there can be some back and forth with the court about what should be redacted and what isn't. And ultimately, the judge will make a determination about what can and can't be released. But he doesn't want the DOJ's view on what it thinks can be released without harming national security.
So there's a couple of things here to kind of peel back. First of all, depending on what's redacted, what would be the most helpful information in terms of transparency for the public? I mean, is it who they're looking at? Was it what they took and why? What would be the most valuable information that we could learn?
Well, as of this point, Marnie, I think we know pretty much what we're going to know about what was taken, because we got that list, that receipt of what they took. There were only descriptions generally. That won't be in the affidavit. What will be in the affidavit is what came before the warrant. What did they know that led them to believe the president was or somebody was engaged in a crime, what that crime was, and what the documents underlying they expected to find there at Mar-a-Lago. So we can learn a lot about what they thought they might find, why they thought that, and the like. And I think that's going to be very helpful to the public debate about whether this was a legitimate search warrant, whether the search was legitimate, and whether any other potential prosecution might be legitimate. And Marnie, at the end of the day, if in fact they do go forward with the prosecution, this affidavit and this warrant are going to be hotly contested. It's going to come out at some point. The Justice Department's already said this is important to the public interest. They should try to figure out how to make some of this public.
Yeah, it sounds like the clock is ticking. The judge certainly agrees. Jamil, the former president may release this surveillance video from the search. He wants it out there, hasn't done so yet. What's the upside to him releasing that for him personally?
Well, I think for him personally, it strengthens his argument that this was, a raid. You're going to see FBI agents in jackets, with the logos on the back, coming in, rifling through his stuff. And he wants to make the point that, look, these people were in my house, my personal residence, a former president of the United States, and they're just going through my stuff, willy-nilly. Of course, they did have a federal warrant from a federal judge. But his point is this was an unfair treatment and it shouldn't have been done to a former president. It's demeaning, and that's what he wants to get out of it.
Right. And there's also risk that it shows them doing their job, right? So it could backfire.
Right. That's exactly right. And one of the things that might be of concern to the Justice Department, and we heard, Brian talk about the fact that identity agents, but don't forget, they're looking at potentially classified material. So they may be flipping through it. There may be highly sensitive material there. One, that might get out publicly. That's a problem. But moreover, if the president's argument is, I didn't take classified material with me or I declassified it, if you see these documents with all these markings on them, that may not help the president's case.
Jamil, this is a unique case. The circumstances, obviously the players involved, but is there a larger implication to unsealing an affidavit in an ongoing investigation being conducted by the FBI on other potential big cases that they're working? Is there any precedent here?
I think, Marnie, there is precedent for revealing affidavits. It's unusual because typically you want to protect the investigation and the Justice Department will argue for it. But a lot of the things, as you point out correctly, are unusual. The search of a former president's home is highly unusual. The fact that the Justice Department itself sought to unseal the warrant and the return, is unusual. It wasn't objected to by the defendant or the perspective or the person being investigated. And now seeking the affidavit is another sort of unprecedented step. And so, we'll see if this comes out. I do think the judge has made clear he wants some of it out there. Some of it will come out. Now, the question is just how much will DOJ redact? How much will they go, as Brian points out, up to the Court of Appeals and try to litigate this? I think at the end of the day, Barney, though, we are going to see some of this affidavit, and we're going to know a lot more about the investigation when we do.
All right, that deadline next Thursday, August 25th. Jamil, as always, thank you.